Okay, quick announcement, everybody. There are talks being uploaded from previous years. If the listeners see talks being uploaded that they can't, my voice is different in, or the content is different, it's because it's from a few years ago, and in the description section there is the recorded date of the talk. So now to this episode. The title is A Route Through Multidimensional Tolerance. And so, what would the patience of eons be? You know, eons is an unfathomably long time. Because this episode is focused on the multidimensional, I will entertain multidimensional contexts. I will tell you that one of the earliest multidimensional contexts I perceived that was just accepted, it was ideologically embraced at first. I would say was the Abrahamic religions, you know. Specifically from where in the world I found myself in Iran, it was, you can say, the Islamic context. But I will tell you that in 2013, I found an access to another multidimensional framework of reality, narrative on reality, and that was through Tibetan Buddhism. And it really occurred a sort of, I would say, profound insight from Tibetan Buddhism was on emptiness. That I remember I had bought this book from Chapters, and I went to the Chapters section. They had this all these red books, like Buddhist section, Tibetan Buddhist section of the bookstore. And I remember there were all these red books. All the books were red, same color. And I just went in and chose a few of them. And just randomly, it was like such an intuitive phase of my life. One of those books had a meditation in it. Had this idea of looking at something and noticing emptiness. It was this idea that two people could look at a pen, like a pen on a table, any object, and it would not be the same object. And I could tell you that was one of the most fascinating points that I had realized about this realm. That the objects are just objects. We are the subjective movement. We are the subjective animator. You know, we are animating as a subject in accordance to how we move as an object. There's a quote from Voltaire. I will share this with you. It says, "What is tolerance?" Voltaire says, "What is tolerance? It is the consequence of humanity. We are all formed of frailty and error. Let us pardon reciprocally each other's folly. That is the first law of nature." This insight that in 2013 I received on the nature of objects being empty, objects having no nature, it is the one looking at it that imbues the object with nature, with meaning. Same thing going on with words, ink on an empty page. What does that mean? That means man is imbuing multidimensionality to what he first considers to be a singular dimension. It is very clear that we didn't evolve as creatures to suddenly be like, oh yeah, this is like 10 locations at the same time. What we saw in the conscious waking state was grasped as a singular position. This idea of emptiness is the most powerful idea. It is one of the most powerful things to notice about any position, any moment in life. That the objects are there, that objective phenomenology, atoms, you don't have to imagine them. That's the cool thing about atoms. You don't have to tell them where to go in your inner realms. You know, they are they're there before you think about it. That's the cool thing about reality. You know what it is? It's like reality is free imagination, or imagination is another version of reality. Do you see? So this emptiness renders a neutrality for interpretation, and that is multidimensional tolerance. Let's say there's a circumstance and there's a situation. And if this person, let's say there's a person in a situation. And let's say if this person wants to complete, wants to surpass the situation, they have to renounce the person has to renounce, what was the term I was looking for? If I choose to be an individual in accordance to a set of meaning, set of linguistic meaning, the individualism would be defined by the limits of the language. So we can say how empty, how full a system is how much effort has been put. In a binary way, either the person's moving, pretty much I honestly feel human beings can do two things. We can receive the efforts of the world to the self, and we can be an effort of the self in the world. It is so binary, life. It just feels, it honestly feels like putting the foot on the gas and taking it off, putting it on the gas, taking it off, putting it on the gas, taking it off, then in deep sleep going into the passenger seat, then in conscious waking state coming back to the driver's seat, in dream state, I don't know, your head's out the window or something. Now imagine this idea of Buddhist emptiness. You have understood this completely. Let's say you can look at an object and notice before its name. Before its implication, it is nothing. So when one looks at an object, so like, oh my God, I'm looking at this coffee cup. If I didn't look at it, it wouldn't be a coffee cup. It would just be an atomic constitution, or a constitution of color, or a constitution of form, or you could get pretty Aristotelian cause about it. But the major idea follows that if the attention is looking at an object and imbuing it meaning, could it be that physical biological existence has no meaning? The meaning is imbued by the conscious viewer. What that means is we've reached this strange position, I would say, in human inquiry of reality, where an object has noticed it is a subject and has noticed that there requires to be attention to phenomena, then imbuing of quality. That means we can't talk about qualities unless there's something there. Do you know? Imagine somebody says, that was high quality. And somebody says, what was high quality? And the person has no answer. You know? So there requires to be form. So there is something to have attribute. We say we are human beings as if we need to be first, then notice that we are. So if the person looks at an object and sees that it is just an object, the meaning is imposed. Now when the person looks in the mirror, now when the person looks at this body, whoever you are, everybody starting from first person point of view, from the eyes, look at your physical body. Ask yourself what is inputting meaning into this. That means conceptually it's very obvious. The concepts I've been spoon-fed by society, environment, the different experiences I've had, you know. But the context to how something means anything at all, and the mysterious efforts in ontology and etymology, and even teleology. There is something here we have accepted too soon. And I would say it is the limitations of our eyes. We have accepted the senses too soon. We drew the picture too early. What does that mean? That means it's like an artist saw something they were going to draw a portrait of, and just saw one glimpse of it, and the artist drew, but that glimpse wasn't a full glimpse. So the artist doesn't have a full memory. So I would say the fact that we think every human being has 5 senses, that is the tip of the iceberg. And that these senses are not senses. It's not like we have senses. It's that we are found through senses. You see, if you feel if you own the outer realms, you will be disappointed. The inner realms, it tends to be the case that usually the person sees that it's not an object, so you can't own it, the inner realms. But I don't know what the hell these esoteric societies are doing trying to own that. Sometimes I'm telling you, the idea of spirituality, it's again, you can see the iceberg metaphor where every image about spirituality, every metaphysical landscape, you know, the tip of the iceberg is the spirituality with words, the metaphysics that can be spoken about. And then there's a metaphysics that cannot be spoken about. Same sense that they say there's the word Om, and it has a silent meaning, and it has a meaning that is not in silence. It's an ever-present energetic phenomena. That means right now, who is talking to you is energy. Excuse me. You know that tree I'm seeing in front of me? That is energy. Everything is energy. If the reality of energy is accessed, which I think Qigong and Tai Chi and just the whole concept of Qi and Qi is moved towards, on an energetic level, yes, there can be a lot of movement. I could say my attention has energetically and sometimes even geometrically, whether my eyes have been open or closed, has moved. I can really honestly tell you, like, the whole thing about what really shifted my view on reality was that I noticed attention is not limited. See, we don't realize there's an invisible sphere around us, every person. There's an invisible sphere, which is the whole moment. It is the complete all-inclusiveness of phenomenology. What that means is the moment is interpreting everything at once and then interpreting a long line of fragmentation of various points in spiral-like manner, I would say. What does that mean? The body doesn't know where it is. The mind knows where it is, but doesn't know why it is. And the unknown, aka soul, it has known before it could not. That is the nature of nature. It comes prepared into manifestation. Just like how our biological intelligence has an endurance. Because here's the thing, there's a lot of things that human beings can look at nature and be like, this is meaningless. I remember I was speaking about Richard Dawkins, and it was suggesting about kind of like this anatomical tube. I don't know the term, exact term, but it's as if like the heart of a giraffe is evolutionary designed in a weird way, where it's as if like there's a vein that's going. Let me see if I can find a picture of this. All right, guys. If people can look at the not chat section. I mean, the wallpaper. There is an invisible, transparent giraffe. I don't know why the picture is invisible and transparent, but I guess it can work. You see the way the giraffe is designed. Okay, let me see if I can find this picture. Okay. So there's a certain way, certain path. What's the term called? Guys, there's just simply an a difference in anatomical design. For the giraffe, there is an inefficiency. For the human being, there seems to be inefficiency. That's simply the point. There's definitely more to this, though, if people Google Richard Dawkins giraffe. Richard Dawkins, Dawkins's giraffe. You know, it's like. But I'm telling you, it's an incredible video to see. So, anyways, back to the title, A Route Through Multidimensional Tolerance. I don't know. I mean, I would honestly say if I look at my youth, I've been an incredibly intolerant person. If I had been tolerant, I would have remained the same. And so multidimensional tolerance doesn't mean passive blindness. You know, it doesn't mean artificial acceptance, or being accepted by the artificial can also make you artificial, you know. We are a light in the darkness. We are a candle in an empty room, illuminating a certain range of processable uh, phenomena. The world is a living picture that we are endlessly jumping to. You know, either it's one point with endless degrees, or it's endless points. Each point has its own universal, you know, potential. There was a quote by Michelangelo, which ever since hearing this, I can tell you, like, it definitely improved my, I would say, the world's karmic display in my eyes. Michelangelo says patience is eternal genius. Genius is eternal patience. And so if the person can have eternal patience, that means patience, if it was based on a point system, it would just be the infinity symbol. I would say patience is a royal quality. I would say without patience, the person does not see the evolution of what is in front of them. If somebody speaks and you're not patient, it's as if you have never heard them. And it's not that you have never heard them, it's that you never could. You see, that's the thing about impatience. It's an ultimate justification for not caring. That means the moment I feel it's okay to be impatient, when I was younger, I would be very impatient with myself. What that means is when I wanted to do something, it's as if my own delay would bother me. I would say the value of patience is you honor the world, you honor the outer realms, then the outer realms, in accordance to the inner realms, don't have a justification to be intense. You see, it's not about just how you live in the world, it's how you hold the world in your eyes as you live. And this whole thing of law of attraction, people going in front of mirrors like robots saying affirmations, let me tell you, you are either buying truth or you are knowing it. That means there's this notion that this reality is here, regardless of the illusion. The illusion has to start from somewhere. Therefore, the solidification of the truth, or I would say the truth is here before the illusion. And if the truth is here before the illusion and you are here, whether you're in illusion or truth, that means the whole interpretation of what reality is has always been a coin flip. That means 50% we could be right and 50% we could be wrong. We could be right that it is purely a materialistic domain and that matter is just doing something strange in a room that we can't see its edges. Or we can choose to reserve judgment and provide freedom. You know, something I would like to see scientists do one day. I have yet to see it in this lifetime, but one day I would like to see this. That can you imagine? Scientists suddenly all around the world, they've decided something strange, and all the scientists all around the planet, they decide to find the most spiritual, abstract imagination kind of people, you know, in the realm. Those who entertain a multidimensional context to reality experientially. That's the whole difference. Either atoms are your God, or your idea of God was made from atoms. What can I say? We are unknown minds moving through known bodies. These known bodies have generated sound, and the sound instinctually, or one could even say instantaneously, has become a second life. That means we are living a life in front of our eyes, and we are being alive behind our eyes. Imagine all the scientists, all the physicists found all the metaphysicists. And they came to the metaphysicists, the philosophers, and said to them, we don't want superstition, But we want abstract ideas in this area, in that area, in this category, in that category. That means, you see, the issue is that the secular society has dismissed the abstract, not recognizing that the idea of man, which is also man-made, is the most abstract position. You see, we cannot, it's the strange situation where just like a body, just like our physical body, it's like you're not just this, because the awareness is more than the body, but the mind seems to be strictly more than the body. But the body is, how would I say it? It's like language is a body for the mind. You can't technically leave it until you're done with it, or until you have to return the karma you have rented. You see, we have this idea of rent a car. There's also, I would say in a mystical sense, rent a karma. What does that mean? That means as I am speaking to you, this existence of mine, my attention is housed in. Now we're conditioned to think that this house is the ultimate landscape. But in the abstract position of, at first the person being like, what God? It's man-made. And then suddenly being like, what man? Oh my God, what was before man? And it was the silence of a world that didn't need letters. You know, this is why I say, are the letters in the alphabet enough when it comes to the perception of really what is truth here? What are we doing as a species? Like, seriously. It seems like we're like, you know what it is? It seems like we're scared of how great our own future can be. I feel we're intimidated by our own greatness as a species. And this intimidation has led to, I would say, the future generations being for them easier to accept dishonor. That means the rebellious urge within the human being, it's natural. What does that mean? That means when you cage an animal, the animal tries to get out. The animal's like, what the fuck is this? You know? The wild animal tries to break through the cage. Now, what's interesting is human beings, I will tell you, they have successfully caged all animals on this planet. Well, and evolutionary biologists are going to be like, Mr. Within, what do you mean all animals? And I'll be like, I mean that we have caged the outer realm physical animals through metal bars and, zoo, like in the zoo. We've caged them. And we have caged the human animal in language. And I am telling you, these cages of language are intense. Maybe in urban areas of developing countries, developed countries, it's not evident, but I will tell you, in certain developing countries, if you go to the outskirts, you go to the villages, you're going to see there's so much stoic living going on. That means the more, if you could look at the center of a city, the center of a place, to be very centralized, focused, individualistic. As the person goes more and more outside of town, they have no choice to become stoic, because nature doesn't speak. Nature's language is movement. And if your eyes can ride those waves, you will be the wind of your own dreams as you awaken. You see, there is, as Terence McKenna so elegantly said, there is another tenant in the room. And I could tell you that I have heard so many ways of human beings online, just in my own research, in my own study. I've seen so many ways human beings have spoken about this idea, but what serves the best, it's another tenant in the room, What does that mean? That means the individual conscious known object-based being has a roommate. We have a collective roommate on this planet. In ancient times, the ancient Greeks welcomed this roommate. They called it the Logos. Different philosophers, after the collective archetype was pushed back into the void. You see, there's some technologies that there are certain beings, they can instantly pull them out from the void. I call those pilots. And then there are some I would say where you can instantly banish. I have exiled thoughts from my attention. What does that mean? That means, I'll give you an example. I've been walking and I've seen, I'll give you an example, like I've seen an attractive woman, and in my mind there has come, I can tell you what it is. It's like certain ideas. Okay, I'll give you an example. Imagine you're late for oh man, I'm getting carried away with these okay, let's say you're late. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're late for work. You know, you're running, you barely made it through the subway doors, you know, and you're just waiting, panting in the subway, getting there, you know, suddenly the subway doors open, you're about to run into your workplace, and suddenly you have this random thought, I didn't like how somebody talked to me 2 weeks ago. And it's like in that moment of urgency, I can tell you in my own experience, when something goes on an emergency level, or something is important, or something requires a cobra response. An instant response. Then the soul comes in. So the person starts as a body, they live as a mind, and they die as the world. And the eons patiently watch as man sings his songs, you know. There was this idea that I think it was from this Japanese, not I think actually I know, it's from this Japanese comic-based series named Dragon Ball Z. It was show. And in this show there was this theme. There was this context given to the certain unique able characters who could level up in this show, that they were from a warrior species. And this idea made me think and try to fathom that if the human being was to seen in accordance to a profession, that means we're not, let's say, a warrior species, you know, we're a bit gentler than that. But I would say, what kind of species would we see? And I would say the warrior of the inner realm is the designer, is the inventor, is the communicator. We are an explorer species. We're a communicating species. That means our intelligence is never alone, believe it or not. It's a hive mind kind of thing. And you know, guys, there is something I noticed, like, I just remembered in regards to, it has to do a lot with the existential design as well, of course. Because you think about it, for example, cold-blooded, you know, animals, reptiles, for example, let's compare it to a lioness, you know. A lioness and a frog, let's say. I don't know if people know this, but a frog lays so many eggs that that it eats some of the eggs. That means it is known in reptilian life for them to eat. Like reptiles eat their youth, eat their children. They can't discriminate to some degree. But when it comes to mammals, it's like animals, like, oh, at least warm-blooded animals, it's like we shield, we defend, we know. I think it's the comfort we find through heat. I think that as children, the body is so incredibly designed that there is at first an emotional language activated. I feel that the body brings with itself a capacity to interpret the realm regardless of words that the child knows. Now here we find ourselves at a crossroad where Michel Foucault and Noam Chomsky, they had a debate, and they actually came to this position where Noam Chomsky was saying that there was a sort of sub genetical a reason for creativity and the sophisticated use of language, and that it is a genetical mystery. Okay, so it was disconnected. I think it should be back now, guys. So I'm going to continue. What I'm saying is that our perception is a translation of the realm, and I feel that we emotionally perceive the realm. And really, when it comes to temperature and emotions, I would say that is a hidden language. Like, I'll be honest, like, when the person feels cold, they don't want to engage the realm. When they feel too cold, they can't move. When they feel too hot, they can't move. It is room temperature we need. So I would say, could it be that we require a room temperature to our mindset? And could that room temperature be, 37 degrees of patience? A person heard a knock on a door. They opened. They woke up and they suddenly opened the door and they saw there was no one there. They heard the knock again. They went and opened another door, you know. Then they saw there was nothing there. Then the person went and opened another door, and the person would keep hearing this knock and go opening doors until he realized it was the truth knocking on his third eye. Guys, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going to post recommendations of YouTube songs in the chat section, which people can listen in the background, just open up in a new tab and, you know, DJ your way. That's the song I'm listening to right now as I'm speaking. I would say the whole point is that you are either governing yourself as a presence of, as an independent presence of attention, or you're dependent on something that you never were. I would say the way you see, there's two options. Either I wake up and based on the weather of the day, when I say the weather of the day, that means whatever happens in that day is the weather of the day. If there's a fight, that's the weather of the day. If there was anger, that's the weather of the day. If there was joy, there was weather of the day. There isn't, I will tell you, once the person renounces escapism, they actually start experiencing their real karma. I would say that a person can wake up and say, all right, either the concept to the day has to change, or the context. That means the outer realms are happening. That means imagine you went to put your keys into the car and your car just lifted up into the air at a ridiculous amount, like ridiculously. It's like you were just about to put your key in the car door and the car just vertically went into the air 100 meters into the air and just stopped. And you called CAA, and CAA was like, sorry sir, we don't have it's like CAA was like, all right sir, we'll send a helicopter. Or imagine you went in your car, you sat in your car, Imagine you sat in your car, you put the key in the car engine, and as you turned it on, the car just vertically went 200 meters into the air, and it just stopped, and you just called. You called whatever you could. You called your boss, you called your family. You're like, you know, people were like, "Where are you?" And you're like, "I'm in the sky. God damn it! I don't know why." My point is that the outer realms have their own mind and behave in accordance to itself. That means the world was here way before us. It has its own agenda. And regardless, that means think of every human being born, even think of any potential, you know, uh, um, uh, shadows on thrones, and you will see that it is all, the earth is older. The earth is the older, uh, is an older intelligence than human intelligence. This is why human intelligence falls into the concentric sphere of the Gaian mind. Sometimes to the day, you got to change the concept. That means you got to change who you're choosing to be. Sometimes you can change how you're choosing to see the world. Usually, multidimensional tolerance means you have become wise enough to allow both of them to change. That thing I say in some of my talks where I say you got to let the world make the first chess move, or then you will stumble. I can tell you, in my youth, I was a professional stumbler. Like I would stumble, like even physically, I would run so fast that I would sometimes have my foot catch onto the edge of doors, you know? And it's like that nanosecond in the air where you're falling, but if you input more intensity into the moment restores balance and you keep going, you know? That means I will tell you, when people realize, imagine out of a 1000 level video game, fear was the first level, you laugh. You laugh how much of human experience is being limited by the lack of realization that who is this world here for? That means for me, language cannot contain truth. That means stories are possessing human beings as I speak. Unless the person realizes it's an Iron Man suit. If you don't realize language is an Iron Man suit, then you can literally be a poor soul. Because if fear goes away, did you know eternal endurance comes, eternal patience comes, endless endurance, I would say. It's only because of time. That means whoever you are, whatever you're doing, let's say the next thing you go do, whoever's listening, the next thing, whatever it is, whether it's your work, whether it's cooking, whatever you do, the next thing, I will tell you that just strip away, like Photoshop, make the layer of time relevant to your moment invisible. Like Photoshop, there's an option, you can make a layer invisible, you know? So it's like making time invisible. When you are not in time, you can't be a self. When you can't be a self, the world is doing the act. That's it. Two potentials. Either we're a self in a world or we're a world in a self. Behind my eyes, I know it's a world in a self. In front of my eyes, guess what? We're selves in worlds, in a world, Really, the outer realms, its beauty is in its design. children are not being educated enough on design and geometry, and due to the massive language worship phenomena going on, we in some sense have even lost sight of what geometry's position is. Let me tell you why. In the school of Athens, there were guards guarding a room where the Platonic solids were, and the students of the school of Athens couldn't see the Platonic solids. It was intense. It's like even the guards weren't allowed. That means if the guards would see it, they had this idea that the geometry was so sacred, was so divine, that if the person at that time saw with their eyes like a perfect cube or a perfect sphere, it would destroy them. It would wound their psychology. I am telling you, there has always been on the scholars' table debates of shall we break the illusion or shall we not. I am telling you, you know. There are some, just think of the Terminator movie, now think about it in regards to every ideological system. We have forgotten that we are trying to eat. We're like a bee trying to consume honey rather than kind of using it as an archival kind of to develop a hive. Michael in the chat section says strip away time equals be present. It's not a concept. I'll tell you like this, Michael. I'll tell you a story. There was an imperial swordsman who was the instructor of the armies of the empire on how to fight. This imperial swordsman comes home, sees that his wife has been left alone for all the time that he has been in the empire, is cheating with the servant. And the servant is just an innocent guy, and the wife was lonely, and so, you know, the forbidden had come to be bitten, pretty much. The forbidden fruit. But but what happens is this imperial swordsman, he comes in and he's like, it's this intense moment, and the first thing he does is the wife suddenly, they both stop and the wife is silent, you know. The first thing he does is he tells the man, the servant, to step outside. He changes the location of the scenario to outside of the house, you know. And he goes out there, and this is a story back in the day, you know. And the imperial swordsman had two swords. Let's say this is a story set in Japan, ancient Japan, you know. And the imperial swordsman silently just tells the servant, step outside, 2 words, and throws a sword, you know, on the ground, and looks at the servant and says, fight. As if you have dishonored, you have stepped into the temple of another's heart, you know. As if the kingdom, you have sieged the kingdom, you know. And so what it is that the imperial swordsman says fight. Now guys, something about this servant, that the servant was actually a very humble disciple that had no choice but to become a servant of, that was assigned to be a servant, you know. And so he remembers his guru, the servant, and he says very honorably, I don't know, somehow, he says to the imperial swordsman, I need to see my guru before I die. That is I have to do this. This is my honor. I have to go honor my guru before I leave this realm, you know. I will be back, you know, something like, and in the story, he doesn't run away. Like, there was so much honor back in the day that to lose your honor was to die in the minds of the realm, you know. Honor was a big deal. Now it's like, what honor? Everybody, like, you know, throw trash everywhere. The servant goes to the forest where his guru, his sage, not guru, I would say, his Zen, a Zen master is there, He goes to the Zen master and he says, "What should I do?" To his teacher. He goes to his teacher and he says, "What should I do?" And the teacher's just meditating by a tree, and he's just hoping the teacher's like, "All right, don't worry, you can just sit here and be comfortable by this tree and meditate till the end of time," He's hoping to hear that, okay? Now, now what happens is the Zen master opens his eyes suddenly from his meditation, let's say, and suddenly the servant explains the whole scenario. The Zen master closes his eyes. The moment speaks to him. And the Zen master looks at the servant and says, "This is your destiny. And I will give you one sentence of advice. Live as if," listen to this part, guys, "live as if it's your last day in this existence." This servant feels a shock in his system. He realizes he cannot run away. The moment has spoken. He has to walk this way. And he just bows and leaves. And if this was a movie, there would be a cutaway scene to the trees and birds flying away. The next day, the Imperial swordsman is waiting at the same spot, and a sword is thrown on the ground. As if it, the servant comes to the scene, and the Imperial swordsman's watching as if this is going to be over quick, and he sees that the servant, this silent servant, he just comes there. The moment the servant comes into the square, he sees the sword on the ground. He picks up the sword, and in a frenzy, as if his whole life is flashing before his eyes, he could die any second, he's fighting the Imperial swordsman. And so he goes into this frenzy as if it's his last moment in existence. And the Imperial swordsman first goes, "Oh my God, this great warrior was my servant the whole time, what the fuck?" But what the Imperial swordsman says, what the master Imperial swordsman suddenly, okay, let me continue from here. The Imperial swordsman looks into the eyes of the servant and sees this servant is not going to die. This servant is not going to allow himself to die. And for a second, the Imperial swordsman grip becomes loose and the servant hits the sword falls. The intensity in the eye of the servant intimidated his opponent. It didn't intimidate him, it distracted the opponent. The Imperial swordsman wasn't intimidated, I would say, but was more surprised. The sword falls from the Imperial swordsman's hand, and there's a bunch of people in the town being like, "Oh!" gasping. There's gasps, sir. The Imperial swordsman realizes that the moment has spoken. He looks at the servant and just nods. He's an Imperial swordsman, by the way. That's the status, his status. That means the servant is, even though he's fighting him, is showing respect, of course. The servant leaves, and as the story goes, 3 days later attains nirvana. That is it, guys. The moral of the story is that whatever you do, if you were to do it as if it was your last moment in existence, there would be nothing held back. The full intelligence would implement itself. This is why I'm saying once man conquers fear, it's not that we're going to time travel. Time is going to travel through us. Excuse me, guys. Just hang in there. All right, guys. So I found something called it's called the Diamond Sutra. Of course, I've been aware of this before, but the Diamond Sutra, it has some passages on. There's some insight there about sensory perception and beyond it. Sorry guys, I'm gonna actually read from the Lotus Sutra. There was a lot of, there were some translation issues, I would say, with what I was gonna read. But anyways, let's go with the Lotus Sutra. It says, in the Lotus Sutra, it says, however, Tathagata understands the law of one form and one flavor, namely the form of deliverance, the form of dissociation, and the form of dissolution, as well as the ultimate nirvana of eternal tranquility that will eventually return to its original emptiness. The Buddha fully comprehends these, but he does not immediately expound their perfect wisdom to all living beings because he wishes to protect them after having perceived the desires in their mind. Great Bodhisattva practice the law of emptiness. Again, if there are those who practice meditation and attain divine powers, having heard the law of emptiness, they experience exuberant joy in their hearts and emit innumerable rays of lights so as to save numerous living beings. They are the large tree that will grow and develop in their own ways. In the Lotus Sutra it says, meditate upon the law of emptiness to be liberated from the threefold world. Throughout the long night, we practice the law of emptiness so as to be liberated from the threefold world and the bitter pains of trials and tribulations. Dwelling in the final existence, we expected to attain the partial nirvana. The partial. In the Lotus Sutra it says, O monks, if Tathagata knows of his impending parinirvana and knows that the people in the assembly are pure, firm in faith and understanding, have perceived the law of emptiness, and are able to enter deep meditation, then he will gather the assembly of bodhisattvas and Shravakas to expand the Lotus Sutra for them. In this universe, there are no two vehicles to attain parinirvana, for true extinction can only be achieved via the one and only Buddha vehicle. In the Lotus Sutra it says, furthermore, he had a perfect understanding of the law of emptiness expounded by the Buddhas. Having acquired the four unhindered wisdoms, he was able to expound with clarity. Free of doubt and confusion, he had fully developed the divine powers of bodhisattvas. Lifetime after lifetime, he consistently carried out pure Brahma practices. Therefore, he was recognized as a true Shravaka for all people living in the era of that particular Buddha. In the Lotus Sutra it says, the sanctuary represents a mind of great mercy and compassion. The robe represents a heart of gentleness and patience. The throne represents the awareness of emptiness in all phenomena. These are the three principles to apply when the Lotus Sutra is expounded. Okay. So a mind of great mercy and compassion. Step 1. In the Lotus Sutra. Step 2, a heart of gentleness and patience. There we go. Now people understand the title. Yeah. And the third, the awareness of emptiness in all phenomena. And it says these are the three principles to apply. That's it. A mind of great mercy and compassion is a free mind. Because only if you're free you can be giving. I don't know how you can give something without being free. Because if you weren't free, you'd have to hold on to it. If freedom is conditional, it's like an illusion. It's like a mirage in a desert. You ran towards it, but it wasn't there. You're like, oh my God, I'm pretty sure I saw freedom here a second ago. And you're like, the desert is like, nah, man, nah. Even before he had finished his reply, innumerable bodhisattvas seated on the jeweled lotus flowers emerged from the oceans and arrived at Eagle Peak, where they remained elevated in the air. These bodhisattvas had all been taught, transformed, and saved by Manjushri. Oh my God, Manjushri. Manjushri. Those who had mastered bodhisattva practice were having a discussion on the six paramitas. Those Shravakas who previously carried out the Shravakas practices in mid-air were now practicing the Mahayana's principle of emptiness. Manjushri said to accumulated wisdom, "These are the people in the oceans who were taught by me." Alright, let's move on to the next quote. Lotus Sutra says, next, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas should view all phenomena as being intrinsically empty in order to correctly perceive their true nature, which has no topsy-turvy, no movement, no regression, and no evolvement. It is like an empty nothingness without intrinsic nature and beyond the expression of word. There is no birth, no emerging, no arising, no name, no form, no substantial existence, no quantity, no boundary, no hindrance, and no obstruction. All phenomena arise by reason of causation, and they are commonly explained in an inverted manner by reason of creation. Yeah, that means explanations start from the effect to the cause in a material, in a material realm. Right now, we feel the brain is an emergent quality of a non-sentient universe. Somehow the brain has sentience, and we think because the universe is non-sentient, the brain has led to a sentient individual. The sentient individual is trapped in the brain, and beyond that, there's nothing. Nothing. Why is this so? Because Tathagata completely perceives the true characteristics of the threefold world as they are. There is no birth or death, no ebbing or arising. Neither is there present existence and subsequent extinction. Substantial reality or fictitious imagination, same or different. That means a place where the idea of same or different doesn't exist. These characteristics of realities are not what one perceives them to be while living in the three world. That means I would interpret this in the outer realms. Your inner realms are not like the outer realms. Tathagata has clearly and unmistakably seen all of these. And the last quote to share, again, if someone, irrespective of whether his is guilty or not, being shackled by manacles, fetters, kangus, or chains, should call upon the name Bodhisattva of Avalokitesvara. 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 Guys, I can't do this. Upon the name Bodhisattva of Avalokitesvara, then his shackles will be destroyed, setting him free. Let me tell you guys, the whole Bodhisattva nature is that you have found you are no longer fighting the world. It's as if you're in allegiance with the realm. They say in Zen, when you want to climb a mountain, start at the top. And Mr. Within would ask people, where do you guys think the Bodhisattva is starting from? The Bodhisattva archetype that we have found in Buddhist tradition. Anyways, guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. Okay. So I'm back, guys. Got some honey, tea, lemon, whatever I could find. Okay. So let's take this somewhere. Around through multidimensional tolerance, the species needs more multidimensional tolerance. You know, we started off being on in an unconscious world. This is, you can say. I mean, of course, this is my how would I say it? Here, this is Mr.Within's theory on uh, phases of evolution. That there was the unconscious world. There was nothing, no consciousness there, just stuff. Then there came the unconscious self, the body. Without the consciousness, that means there was no individualism, no selfhood. There was bodyhood. So for me, that's one of the great mysteries of the realm, the design of the human body, why this shape, this design, why the eyes where they are. And it's not one of those things that could just get one answer to be satisfied. The mystery is so complex that any answer is just feedback. So from phase one, let us say, of evolution, Mr. Within's evolution, beyond evolution, the unconscious world, the unconscious self, that's the objective evolution. Then there was the conscious self, and this is what they don't teach in schools, that there was an evolution to how we became a subject to ourselves. So that's the conscious self. We were, a body appeared, legs appeared, limbs appeared. Okay. Limbs appeared, creaturehood occurred, and this creaturehood was just moving. You could just think of random movement on the earth. Then we became conscious that we're moving. And I don't know what this was because of. Maybe the creature noticed its shadow, maybe it saw its reflection in a pond, maybe it saw other creatures and thought it was itself. I don't know, same result. So we became a subject. Matter evolved to a subject to itself that's now questioning itself and recording podcasts, you know. This earth is up to something, guys. from from the conscious self through the cocoon of language and beyond the metamorphosis of language and attention. You entered this world as an individual object. There is a huge potential that when the being exits, they are a collective subject. So we must not fear our minds. Now that we have a clear sense of it, now that we have an alphabet, we must use it. Now that we have the capacity in this framework of perception, now you can pilot. Later on, you may not know how you can pilot. You may not even know if you will be in a state of having control to pilot. Now is the pilot's calling. Then we will become the conscious world. That's the final phase of evolution. At that point, there's no individual. What does that mean? We started as the unconscious world. We ended up as the conscious world. That means you can say species and creaturehood is a way a planet becomes conscious of itself. You know, the same way we are moving our hands, you can say we are moving our hands and we are animate and we're conscious to ourselves. We require to move to exist to ourselves. I feel nature requires to move. And so this rise and fall of civilizations from the human perspective is the source of all, is the center, is the big deal. But when we look at it from the planet's perspective, we are its artwork. I can tell you that I have cried in my, not like not like Niagara Falls coming down, my, you know, not that level, but I would say like I have kind cried at inevitabilities in my realm, in my inner realms. That means it's just a point where the person realizes whatever movement the person does, nature is moving that way. Then it becomes attention's choice to be a thought or more. There are three dimensions that can be perceived to human nature. A dimension that is contained from the beginning of this existence, to the end of existence, individual existence. Then there is the beginning. So check it out. There is an identification with the beginning of the self and the end of the self. There's an identification with the beginning of the world, the universe, and the end of the universe. And then there is the inconceivable. As if we have been getting closer and closer to the center of the circle. And then we're like, yo, what degree is the center of the circle? And we're realizing it's the potential of all of it. That's really it. You reach the, if I was to give it a name, because it's beyond the language threshold, I would call it the absoluta automata state, something like that. I would give it that kind of name. The center of the circle where meaning extends from. In a book I wrote called The Inventor Sphere, this center of the circle is the origin of all ideas. That means we tend to think ideas are scattered in the world because ideas are meant to map and reflect the outer events. But when we realize that the outer events are finding themselves into a projected simulated meaning to a singular position, then the I thought becomes the ultimate lens of how the world is being accepted. That means in the outer realms, you conditionally fly. In the inner realms, in the inner sky, you unconditionally fly. That means there is no boundary. You're not a defined being. You're simply an attention, and it depends on what your preference is. If in the inner realms you're a person who wants to see images, my preference changed. But I would say if you're a person who wants to see images in your inner realms, you find single pointed attention to images. If you're a person who wants, let's say you're a musician, okay, let's say you're a musician and you actually you want to be a really good musician, but the thing is you don't have access to an instrument, but you would say, all right, so let's say if I did have access to the instrument, the first thing would be to actually hear the sounds. I don't know, but for me, it's like my senses, the five senses, they echo into my inner realms and they animate. What does that mean? That means I could be walking in the street and suddenly the melody of my favorite song comes in and I'm like literally jogging without headphones as if I'm hearing, my favorite song. You know what I mean? So the so the inner realms can activate, in different ways. But I would say there are moments where the person can, in the inner realms, of course, express authority. You have freedom. But the thing is that authority tends to be responded to, what I would say, the logos or the with the conscience, the intuition responds to you. That means, you know what it is? It's as if like the world makes a move, then the human being sees what the world has done, then the self makes a move, and then the inner world gives a comment. That means I think that our conscience is a comparison with another sense that of self that exists in our psyche that's trying to retaliate. We see these in movies, right? In like certain shows. The good character is possessed by evil, right? And then the friend of the good character comes and says, "Hey, you used to be a good character. Remember when you were good?" And the person's like, "Oh yeah, I was good." And suddenly the whole like possession, ideological possession stops. And the reason for that is why? Because there is another self. What does that mean? That means if let's say this cup of tea that I just made for myself, if I grab this in the air and I want to, with a chaotic archetype, slam it to the ground, suddenly in my psyche, there's going to be that sense of self that waited for the tea to get made, which is going to rebel in that instant. And that's conscience. It is how you as a mind are actually living as a field. So you're multi-local. That's how you have access to memories at a whim. But in the outer realms, you're specified. It's conditional, the circumstances of living. So what it is it seems that, you know, that it is true that the gods are behind our eyes, but they are the ones looking. It's collective, it's energy, it has a superiority beyond conception. Okay, so I've shared what I feel was required for this episode. I'm just going to read an essay, guys, that I wrote in 2017 from this unpublished work called The Source of Language. Okay. This essay is called Speaking the Language of Existence. The essence of the source of language is a self-realization beyond words. When you see people walking outside, what distinguishes their intelligence? Or even this question can be asked in another way. On this random rock spinning in space, what is the most advanced expression of an advanced state? The answer seems to be the catalyzation of self-awareness induced by sophisticated mouth noises that recreate the world in accordance with collective being and objective shifts. In other words, what seems to be so fascinating about a person walking outside is how advanced their communication is and how advanced they are in awareness to it. What this means is that when I looked at how I exist, I revealed for myself the multiplicity of in quotations subject and an in quotations object to be void in the same moment. That means we exist objectively with biological bodies, but also simultaneously we exist through the language of conscious recognition. What this implies is that our conscious existence is emptier than we think. And if we as a civilization and all that we are just focus on empty ideas, we have chosen to be blind by not sincerely exploring the truth of the universe that we are. Some will read these words and only see words. Some will read these words and only see worlds. Some will read these words and only see themselves. Wisdom belongs to the last. Language is a global epidemic, but also a very beautiful multidimensional tool. It is said that if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answers. My beloved, you exist in the here and now. Isn't that fascinating beyond language and thought, which is only an aspect of your moment? The hardest secret truth to accept is that all wars are in the mind. Bless the Buddhas of compassion who speak through their silent nature and hold flowers as silent sermons. I have written this book poetically, but the truth was always a silent one. The one is in caps. If direct experience could be divided in duality as the in quotations the experienced and the in quotations the experiencer, My whole emphasis is that language and ideology and all that they lead to is only in the realm of the, in quotations, the experienced. The experiencer, which can be playfully said to compose 50% of your direct experience, is untouchable by conception and duality, for it is the observer, the seer, and the experiencer of duality. For, uh, uh, excuse me, you are the ultimate witness of the cosmos. Within a moment that cannot be separate from all that is. How could existence be separate from existence? How could cosmic intelligence be blind to itself? We are an evolving species. It is now time to move beyond time and evolve beyond the games of language. If the world of noises is temporary, then let us remember eternal silence. As much as the light of the sun is in your eyes are in the sun's light. Sight is made of starlight and its absence. Those who are wise align with nature and become in tune with their moment's natural presence. This is always simpler than you think. Enlightenment has no special technique. Just be still and silent, and the nature of the truth of truths shall through its own divine grace reveal itself to you. Let wisdom be rediscovered within. You are a conscious being, and that means you have the eternal sight. Your moment of being is not just speaking the language of existence. It is also listening, as all that is. Did mankind get obsessed with language too soon? Only the transcendentally aware will be able to answer as their own truth. Life is a moment of being, and the witness cannot be formed when there is as awareness beyond the form. As one observes how advanced their intelligent, existential, and experiential communication is, they will soon see the edges of the worlds of language, and just like those shows on TV, the ship will float beyond the waters of a flat earth. The space of life is infinite for those who are in the finite, in the finite. As you go within every concept, idea, and language ever known, the void will remind you of the majesty of your breath and how the spontaneity of existence, even in this moment, is so profound, it can never be lost. Kiss truth with lips that belong to all eyes. There is no creature in the dark. You are simply alive beyond thought. In my personal self-inquiry about my own nature of consciousness, I have noticed I have no qualities other than where my attention is on. As if my conscious attention was made of glass, whatever surface, texture, color of experience it goes on, it becomes one with it. Simply said, I am aware of everything through nothing, which simultaneously and naturally brings an awareness of both. There are multiverses within us and we don't even know it. Life is not something to have a conclusion. It is an unlimited effort beyond duality's dreams. Could it be that to realize there is no awakening is the awakening? I hope this episode was helpful. Thanks for listening.